issue happens, like daily users, and then they don't have you really should, yeah, because it all is
I like a joke.
I think my house
My, yeah, a lot, like, during my undergrad, I never bought clothes. I moved like 5 times around before. So, yeah, so I was like, I refuse to buy cups. So what I do is I put it in the closet, just clean out the jar. And then when you move, you just toss them all, you don't move them. Really? Yeah. I, like, when I graduated, I took like 3. And then I made MS more like her apartment. And then my girlfriend was like,
what would you reuse the pasta jar?
We have money. Sorry?
What did you reuse the pasta jar?
As a cup. With water or whatever.
Like you take the label off?
Yeah. It's not hard. How long? I enjoy it.
Was ours from IKEA? I didn't take it. Did you just make it? Did you get cups from IKEA?
I haven't ever bought cups either because my roommates just keep having them. So I don't own any appliances. I don't own any silverware. I don't own
Don't fall down the single-use kitchen appliance. That's currently what I'm called out.
The single-use kitchen.
Yeah, like it's a couple air fryers.
Oh, I have, yeah.
No, I don't. But like, we just got a KitchenAid mixer. It's pretty big.
Did you know an air fryer is just a small convection?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a microwave that's also
Yeah, like a lot of. Did you know that your oven probably has a
Because of the convection feature? No.
Yeah.
Well, it's the fan blows faster, it's more frequent. Also, I think it's like constantly pushing out the air and bringing the new air out. So I also don't think my air fryer, but all I really use it for is cooking. Yeah, it's the most common use case for air fryer. Oh my god, so much. I mean, basically anything you reheat in the air fryer is soggy in the microwave. It's crispy in the air fryer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like the perfect application.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, so had some OBS issues.
I don't have the French fries, the pod. I have the rocks.
So where are we with the column generation? Mention the problem once again. Every pattern here, every column in M suggests a way to chop a board of 15 feet into shelves. We had some possible prices for the pieces of every shelf combination, but mostly every column here suggests some pattern to cut a single shelf right now. And still with the single shelf, I can cut a single shelf into 0, 1, 1 incline, cut it into 0 shelf of length 4, 1 of length 6, and 1 of length 7. That was one such one. And because we had, as a number of shelf, number of options grows exponentially in this matrix, we have more and more columns of the matrix. And we don't want to keep all of them explicitly. We want to just start with some constraint problem defined by constraint matrix. And constraints would be just take a few of the columns, say the first 3 columns here. Everything that I didn't specify, just 0. So the first column is 3, 0, 0, meaning a pattern that suggests break it into 3 share, break the 15 foot stock into 3 shelf of length 4 each. That was the first column. That's one of the options. And now, warning alert, we are using the word constraints here. That's a constraints matrix, and we'll talk about the constraints LP. But the constraints LP is the meaning of the word constraints. would be very confusing when we'll talk about a primal LP. So before moving to the primal LP, I want to mention X tries to find how many how many stocks do I need to buy, given that I need to produce at least 80 shelf of length 4, 50 of length 6, and 100 of length 7. That was the meaning of the constraints matrix, and we tried to minimize. See here was what vector? Just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And we can think about it as a normal LP matrix, or LP. At the moment it's LP, where you have a set of half planes and you want to define the feasible region. That's one way to solve about this n times x. Or I can think about it as having n. Here is the matrix M, the unconstrained. Here is a vector x, x1, x2, dot, 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 x many over here. And what x tells me is some linear combination that it takes vector a1 multiplied by x1. So a1 plus x1. But x1 here multiplies the whole first row, the whole first column. Think about the first column as a vector. Somewhere here multiplied by x1, this unknown, which adds some length to it. Continue this multiplication, a2 vector x2 plus dot 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 a m x m. So this is this multiplication, and it should be large or equal than b. Some other vector b, and I'm trying to minimize sigma of xi. The constraint matrix here, when you think about it as you have Lego bricks, pieces that you can take each vector, multiply by a summation. The sum of the xi, ai should be bounded no longer than some other vector. And in addition, you want the sum of the xi's to be as small as possible, but all of them should be positive. It still boils down to how many stocks are cut according to this piece. Okay, so if it's no, I'll repeat what I just said. I mentioned instead of thinking about x times m as m is a set of half planes and x is a point, and we are trying to ask if the point is in the feasible region or not, we can, without changing anything, just the very same writing, also suggest a different way to geometrically understand this unconstrained primal LP. You have the set of patterns, each AI. I'm not consistent actually with the matrix, the vector AI is what I took from the GeoGebra app that was handy for me. So you have the set of vector A1 dot 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 A5. Each AI is a column over here, and you all want to create a summation of it so that some function is optimized. Okay, using these Lego bricks. That if M is the whole matrix. What do I do for the constraint matrix? I just suggest, you know what, maybe don't use A4 and A5. Don't solve the very same problem, but the constraints problem says you just have only A1, 2, 3 to work with, and then it would be only A1, 2, 3, 4 to work with. But so the constraints will add more and more patterns into it if needed, or tells you via the duality, you don't need to have anything. You already reached the maximum. So the minimum, the optimum. People with me? So far I didn't explain what is a column generation. I just mentioned what is the meaning of the original problem as a linear summation of the vectors AI. It's not necessarily a convex combination, but I sum them up. So they should all this sigma AI xi should be less than this vector B, and I'm trying to minimize the summation of the xi. The constraint just says you have some of these vectors, because there is exponentially many of them, you just start with a much smaller subset. This would be one of these vectors, that would be the second one, that would be the third one. Let's see if we can we reach the optimum using only these three vectors. And the column generation will do one of the following. Either it will tell you you reached optimum even though you are only using these columns, or alternatively it would tell you here is one column that it might be that you are not in the optimum. Here is one column that you need to add because it will help you improve the optimization function. But if I just look at this problem at the primal, I have no clue if introducing one of these exponentially many vectors will it improve my cost function or not. So at this point, I just want to mention that the maximum of the constraints, and notice that the max is that will it work also in this case? Yeah, here I need to swap them. Since I start from the meaning of the constraint is different in the primal and dual. So if I'm trying to minimize something, then if trying to minimize something and I have fewer blocks to work with in the constraints one, which one is smaller? unconstrained one is smaller. Yeah. Why? Because the minimum of the constraints versus the minimum of the unconstraints. This has more columns. You're trying to minimize more Lego blocks to work with. Trying to minimize something. So the minimum of the unconstrained, how is this with respect to the minimum of the constraints? Minimum of the constraints, fewer Lego blocks. It will be the mirror image when we'll talk about what happened in the dual. So I found a solution for the constraint of primal. So let X star So we have X star, X prime, Y prime, and Y star. What we really want is what is Y prime. What we really want is Y star, global, or X star. We actually don't care about the primal. The primal just is a dual, just help us to solve the primal again. So what I really want, what I know is that a C X prime equal B Y prime. Well, how did I solve the primal? I just use the duality, and here it's both with prime, so they must be equal to each other. We had a theorem about it last meeting. If you have, forget about constraint and constraint, you're using the same matrix, you'll get that the primal and the dual have the same optimal solution, the same value of the cost function. Convinced? This is true, and it's the same way C of X star, if I had all the exponentially many constraints, equal B of Y star. That's also true. What do I really want to know is C X prime, is it true or false? Is it also equal to C X star? That is, when I'm adding more vectors, more Lego bricks to work with, will I get a better solution, or will I have the same solution that I had so far? That is, throwing in more columns doesn't really help you. Yeah?
Is the Y constraint dual?
Sorry?
The Y is a constraint dual?
Dual, yeah. And these ones are in both seats, the dual. Okay. So, what do? I take I take X prime, the solution for the dual, what we had as X square in the previous time, and I created the solution to the dual. What is a dual now? The dual is just take all these vectors, and now write Y equal X to smaller equals than B. So now you have a linear programming as we saw since the very beginning of the course. That's in the dual. See, well here in the dual, and what I calculated is the solution for x star will be right here. That's the solution for x prime will be right here possibly. Or possibly x star is already right here in the global optimum. How can I, in the primal, I didn't know if I have enough many vectors or not. How can I decide if the solution to the constraint matrix with fewer constraints now the constraint has fewer constraints, is this the same optimum as the unconstrained solution? I have the optimum right here that was y prime. I have the solution right here, which is y star. Is the same point or not? How can we ask about it? Let's ask for y prime, and now you see why I was so obsessed in generating y prime. Let's ask for y prime. Is y prime satisfies every constraint in the dual? Meaning, if my constraints were that y, I know that y prime m bar will be small or equal than c. That's for m bar itself. What happened to m when I'm adding more and more columns here? Now there are these new columns, the new a, j, which belongs to m, but does not belong to m bar, the constraint matrix. They might cause y prime times m to be larger than c. So my check is either any column in m that we such that y prime times m is larger than m. So to picture it, here all my constraints in blue, all my constraints in m. So, here are all my constraints in blue would be in m star, in m a bar. And what I want to know is, does it agree with the rest of the half planes? Here is one half plane that it does agree. Here is another half plane in white. Here is one half plane that violate this constraint. Right? This would be aj times, what is this point? Y prime larger than c, larger than 1 in this case. Okay, so it means that the value that you get for the full matrix, your optimum for the full matrix, is different than the optimum of the constraint matrix, which means that even though you got the optimum for the constraint matrix, it's for the primal, it might be not the optimum for the dual. Alternatively, if for all my set of constraints y prime is already in the constraint, then what I have right here as my solution to the prime only is also the solution to the full matrix as well. If you don't have any violation, then the value of cx prime, solution for the constraint primal, was already as good as you can get. Let's go back a few slides. Now, after this slide, how did I check all of it? Go over what we went through last class. I created the constraint matrix, M bar, only 3 columns. I created the solution to the primal. Then I computed the solution to the dual. This point over here, y prime, solution to the dual. How? Because I picked M to be very friendly. Its values are 3, 2, 2, implying that it's what is the inverse of M? 1 over 3, 1 over 2, 1 over 2. Right? If M is 3, 2, 2, and everything else is 0, then is 1 over 3, 1 over 2, 1 over 2. That's just a diagonal multiplied by the vector 1, 1, 1. What do you get? This is the vector y prime. Let's check if we can find any column of M that doesn't agree with y prime. But this is a moment of the aha moment, right? That's a good time to wake up. The vector y third half half y prime. How do I interpret it with respect to our original problem? This would be the price, my revenue from creating a shelf of 4 feet. Third of $1, half a dollar for a shelf of 6, half a dollar for a shelf of 7. Find values A4, A6, A7, such that this vector times this is larger than 1 if you could. If you cannot, then it implies that y prime is already the optimum. If you could find such a vector, such a column of M, but what should this vector be? To start with, it should be positive, but more of it, what does M contain? M contains only columns that each one is a pattern that you should cut the stock according to this pattern. So your problem turned out to be, given that these are the prices, third, half, and half for 4 feet, 6 feet, and 7 feet, correspondingly, try to generate a column such that this column times this cost would be larger than 1, if you could. How do we do it? Linear programming. Dynamic programming. The dynamic programming that went through the stock and compute for every sub piece of the stock from 0 till M what is the optimum solution for this substock. So it's a whole mixture of topics from a few pieces of the course that we did so far. Okay, so it turns out that cutting the stock according to 2 units of 4 and 1 unit of 7 gives me a revenue of $1.16, which is more than 1, meaning it's on the wrong side of this half plane in the dual, or throw it into M as one of your options, and hopefully it will increase your revenue. So it's either suggest add another column, and maybe I'll need to add more columns. Right? I'm not sure that I'm done after 1 column, but at least I hope that I can improve my revenue. And usually I could. And usually after just a few many columns that you generate, you get as a global optimum, and then you're done. You just get that your new y that you'll compute, you will not find a pattern right here that brings it to be more than 1. Meaning that the old y is in the fixable region of all the patterns, and it's time to declare global optimum. So there is no guarantee about how many columns I'll have to generate. But the normal number is much smaller than the exponential many that I had to start with had I start with all exponentially many patterns. Cool with everybody? Kind of? Let's see one more example of column generation. I want to mention to you the art gallery. One of the problems is I have a polygon. Here are my vertices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are my vertices. Vector, I need to place cameras, sensors. I place cameras only on vertices. I insist on seeing only the vertices, not every point in the polygon. And I want to have as few sensors as possible. I want to minimize the problem of pick as few sensors as possible. So what was our ILP in this case? X1 tells me X1 is a variable, which is Boolean, 0, 1, and X1 will be 1 if I'll place a camera on sensor on vertex 1. X1 is 1 if and only if I place a camera on sensor 1. X6 is 1 if and only if you're placing a sensor on vertex 6. So what is our cost function? Minimize the sum of the x-axis. This is just the sum of how many sensors did you pick in your cover for the art gallery to see the whole gallery. To see the gallery here implies it is defined as see only all the vertices of the polygon. What are our constraints? How can I guarantee that that vertex 6 is being seen? Vertex 6 is seen if either there is a sensor right on top of it at vertex 6 as exactly, or if I have a sensor of at vertex 5 because 5 sees 6, or if I have a sensor at vertex 1 because 1 also sees 6. That is, if neither x1 nor x5 nor x6 are picked, you don't have sensor about it in at least one of them, then nobody sees vertex 6. So one of the constraints of the ILP was x1 plus x5 plus x6 should be larger or equal than 1. That just guarantees that vertex 6 is seen. Similarly, this set of constraints guarantees that vertex v4 is seen in my construction. Okay, so I have a set of constraints, and the problem started by, for every vertex I, ask what is the visibility region for all the other vertices that see this vertex. So far, no column generation, just tedious, boring ILP. Okay, problem, sensor scheduling. You have this problem in one of the homeworks, but in the homework I asked you about one-dimensional sensors. Here my sensors are two-dimensional, it's like more of a camera. So every sensor has a battery. Every sensor comes with a battery. And I can turn on, activate, and deactivate the sensors as many times as I want. But this battery makes the sensor usable only for 1 hour. And okay, for every sensor, you can make it usable for a total of 1 hour. But when exactly are you using the sensor is entirely up to you. And our problem is schedule when do you activate and deactivate sensors such that you'll have the maximum coverage time. You want to make the whole area being covered for as long as possible. So that would be our scheduling problem. When do you start which sensors so that the lifespan of the whole system is as long as possible? So here is my polygon. This is my hole. V1, V2, V3 is what I need to decide. If I turn the whole three of them, so this is a big hole at the middle of the building, like in Simpson, the inner part. That's the outer part, and here are my three vertices that I have the camera on. And how do I use them in an optimum schedule? So there is a little nuance here. If I can turn on and off a sensor only once, that is, once it's activated, it will use its battery, and then it will die, then the solution to this problem would be what? Start, for example, if I only turn on V1 by itself, I need to add a few vertices here. So actually, I'll make it. If I insist on seeing the vertices, so notice V2 doesn't see this vertex over here, this anonymous guy over here. V1 sees this guy, V3 sees this guy. So if I just start one of the sensors, by itself it doesn't cover the whole polygon. I need to start at least two. If in the non-split case, when I start I cannot turn it off, if I need to start at least two, maybe I'll pick V1 and V3. They will survive for 1 hour. And then they publish V2 by itself is useless, and so the max lifespan is only 1 hour. Suggest a better strategy? So now I'm moving in, of course, in the case that I cannot split them, once you turn on a sensor, it lives forever, or it lives for an hour and then it dies. Then I cannot get it to be covered for more than an hour. But if I'm allowed to split it, how? I don't see 2 hours.
So what we'll do is turn on V1 and V3 for like 30 minutes, and then after 30 minutes we'll turn off V1 and then turn on V2.
Excellent. You're almost absolutely correct. So start V1, V2 for half hour, meaning I use half of the battery of each one of them. Then I'll turn on V1 and V3. They also see everything for half hour. At this moment, since V1 was activated for the whole hour, it's perished. I cannot use V1 anymore, but I can use V2 and V3 for another half hour. So I can cover the whole thing for 1.5 hours. Okay, so just to show you that this problem is not entirely trivial, and maybe greedy is not great. So, but I want to show it as an example of gaining something from column generation. So let's create our matrix M. What is our matrix? The rows are the sensors, sensor 1, sensor 2, all the way to sensor 6. And column is a subset of sensors that sees the whole polygon. I'll call it a cover. A cover is a subset of sensors that sees the whole polygon. For example, cover 1 would be sensor 2 and sensor 4. If I start sensor 2 and sensor 4, actually I don't see 6 in this case. So maybe that's not a good cover. But if I'll start instead 2 and well, yeah, actually that's a cover. So 3 and 1 sees the whole polygon. 3, 1 and 3 sees everything here. So that's one of the cover. The first two are not. So this will be a good cover. And so on. I can list more and more covers. And now if every row is a cover, once I have all these possible covers, what would be my optimization problem? Call this matrix M and assume that you're using the first cover for a time t1. Using the second cover, cover 2, for a period of time t2, all the way until the last cover that you have in the matrix, tn. That's how much. Ti is by how much time you're using it. What am I trying to maximize? The total times that everything is covered, maximum the sum of the TIs. What's my constraint? When I put the vector t over here, then look at sensor 1. It will not influence by t1, not by t2. t3 times the 1 plus, t sensor 1 times t3, sensor 1 times t4. The summation should be for every sensor no more than 1 battery, 1 unit, 1 hour. So m times this vector t, m times the vector t, each component of it should be less than 1. Each sensor should work for no more than 1. Okay, so it looks like a perfect solution. It's not ILP, notice. Ti could be any float numbers. It's perfectly good LP, except that even in this very toy problem, the number of columns could be exponential. The number of covers of the same polygon combination of sensors could be extremely large. So that seemed like a good candidate for a column generation. And what this is, even if I just write down the legit columns, ignoring the typos here, just the legit columns, I can end up with ridiculously large number of columns. If you have n sensors, it can be 2 to the n many sensors out there. And each one is a good cover, and I don't want to generate all these numbers. I want to start up with a small number of covers. Let's take sensor 1 and sensor 2 as a cover. Here I'm just talking about 3 sensors. Actually, I'm talking about the problems that you see in the example over here. And you have, that's the only cover. Start vertex 1 and vertex 2. I'm referring here to the solution that you see on the whiteboard on the left. I just start with 1 column in my matrix, just 1 cover, T1, T2. Find the solution, the vector T that solve it. Since there is only 1 column, it only have 1 solution. Maximize T subject to each sensor doesn't work more than Ti time, T1 time. So the solution is just T1. And what would be therefore the dual problem right here? Okay, if you check the slide, the dual problem would be it doesn't have a clear geometric information, but you're just using the duality. Dual problem is find y in y3, y3, because we have 3 sensors over here. So find y3. What happened to the primal and dual in general? If in the primal we are maximizing, in the dual we are minimizing. If in the primal we had small or equal, in the dual we have large or equal. If B and C swap places, so ym larger than C, because here it was m times t smaller than B, so the direction of the inequality swapped, and what used to be C over here becoming C over here as a constraint. And what do I minimize? That's a surprising part, minimize B times Y. What do I do once again? I'll take the solution to the dual. That's a solution to the dual. Y. If that's my dual, sorry, the solution to which dual is this? The dual when I'm using the constrained matrix, only one column. Solution to the dual when I'm using only one column. I'm asking, is there any column out of the exponentially many that I don't really have that would violate this solution? Is there any cover that violates this solution? What do I mean violate? Here you're asking for ym larger or equal than C. In the dual, C is uniformly 1. C is uniformly 1. I'm asking, can I find a cover of the polygon such that now y times the sensor in this cover would be larger than 1. If you can find it that larger than 1, if you can find a cover for which the old y prime is outside its feasible region, that's the old y prime. If you find any half planes that separate between you and the feasible region, this half plane is a cover. Use it in your cover, in your set of covers, and solve the LP once again. Add it as one of the covers. So how do I solve this problem of finding such a cover? Well, as in, it's strange. So if you have such a cover Cj, then yCj should be large or equal than 1 for every column J. I mean, so if you find if there is no violation for y prime, then y times every column that you generate is larger or equal than 1. If there is a violation, then there should be a cover, C, call it S1, S2, S3, because I only have 3 sensors over here, such that C times the solution to y is strictly less than 1. Okay, how do I solve this problem? I'm going back to our linear programming one slide ago. Going back to the linear programming one slide ago, or write the linear programming in this case, but what would be our constraints right here? The V1, x1 plus x2 plus x3 should be larger or equal than 1. Sorry. And I want to solve the ILP, but the ILP is a bit strange. What is the difference between the ILP? Anybody sees it? The ILP for the standard art gallery was to minimize x1 plus x2 plus x3. That was the ILP for the standard art gallery. But now in my dual, what do I say? What are the solutions to the primal for the constraint primal? gives the solution for the constraint primal told me every sensor now has a price, has a cost if you're using it. Every sensor has a cost, and you ask, can I cover the whole polygon where the sensor that I'm using, given that its cost, it costs me less than 1. Where did the cost came from? From the solution to the constrained dual. So yes, you solve it, and it turns out that if your original solution was S1 and S3, then when you solve the constraints, the weighted out gallery, now with these costs, and find all the xi's, you realize that, hey, you forgot this cover. So now I'll solve the LP for this problem, the LP, that is, but use these two covers. And what do you discover as a solution for these two covers? That you need to use this one for half the time, this one for half the time, and as you see, you need actually the third column, the third cover as well, because so that the solution consists of 3 covers, and then voila, the same technique tells you you don't need any more covers. And it's 5:54, so we don't have time for Rabin Cup. The Rabin Cup was a cool thing, just a highlight. Here I have a text. Here I have a pattern. Pattern is ABA. The text has a lot of letters, L, C, D, F, A, B, A, G, H, I. This pattern appears in the text somewhere as the whole thing. But shift the window of the text to the right place, and you'll see on this window exactly the pattern appear. So I want to ask, is the word hello appeared anywhere in my document? What are the main approaches to solve this problem? If I want to solve it exactly, I can use a Knuth-Morat part that build an automaton, and based on this automaton, find it. That's one way. Oh, sorry, how do I solve this problem? I can go naively, put the window, the pattern has 3 letters, put the window of 3 letters over here, and then check each character, does it fit the corresponding character in the pattern. So that takes m times n, where n is the length of the text, m is the length of the pattern. That's naively. Shift, check every character. Shift by 1, check every character. Shift by 1, check every character. Naively, m by n. Why? Of course, I can stop the moment that there is any character that is different, but if my text is A, and my pattern is A, B, and I start to check from the right, then always it's the last moment that I discovered that they are different, right? So this is naive part. What else can I do? I can use fast Fourier transform, which is a great idea. It works in n log n. It works very nicely with don't cares, that some characters can match any character right here. Well, I'm not going to teach you fast Fourier transform in the remaining 18 minutes, but know that it's definitely usable and practical for string matching. Again, it's not for signals, it's for string matching. Essentially, you'll say, let's express it as binaries, and then let's assume that it's only convert the A, B, A into 1, minus 1, 1. So B will be minus 1, A will be 1, everything is binary. My text would consist of only binary once again. So for the ABA, I'll have 1, minus 1, 1. Everything is just 2 characters. And then when you'll put the ABA, multiply every character and sum them up, you'll get the maximum value comparing to any other combination, that some of the ones matches -1 and vice versa. So that's by convolution, you'll have like the maximum response in the right point. So both are useful parts. Other technique would be, let's use hashing of this text. Let's hash the pattern. And let's hash the text. I'm sorry, I'll hash the So what did I do? I took from the text the prefix of the first m characters, and I hashed it. And then I shifted my window by 1. So now I'm looking at the text from 2 until m+1, hash it. I look it from 3 all the way to m+2 and hash it. And all these hash values, of course, if I got the hash value of the text, then it's a good indication that there is a match. But if I generate all these substrings, I didn't earn anything. But if I generate all these substrings, then just at every such substrings, I need m time. There are m characters right here. I need to use m time just to compute these hash values. And if I do it for all this translation, I'm back to the m times n. So what does Rabin-Karp suggest? It's the same Rabin from the closest pair of points that we saw way earlier in the course. What they suggest, assuming that I'm down to binary, so my text is 1, 0, 1, and my pattern is 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1. So I have it somewhere, the 1, 0, 1, the pattern. What do? I think about it as a number as a number in base 2. And think about these 3 bits in base 2. And ask if these numbers in base 2 are equal to each other. And then I'll ask about shifting, like compute what this string of bits equal to in base 2. Think about these 3 bits equal to in base 2, what these 3 bits equal to in base 2, and so on. And now ask if these numbers are equal to the numbers that the text represents in binary. And of course, if they are equal to each other, then great, I got a match. Actually, I'm sure that I got a match. It's not even with half probability, it's 100%. So if it's so great, why am I not done right here? Sure, it's a number, but how many bits does it have? It could have m bits, which is way more longer than log 2 of n. So just to handle this number, I mean, huge troubles. I cannot say that in constant time I can handle this number. What do? Before that, how do I move from the black window, that is t from 1 to 3, to the red window, that is t of 1 dot 3, this age value of 1 to 3, to t of 2 to 4. These 2 numerical values. How do I move from here to here?
Just shift your mask.
Shift your mask, but if it's a number, if there is a number, so I don't have the mask. I have here the number is 001, which I think about 1. Here the number is 010 for this window, which I think about 2 in binary. I multiply by 2, and I reduce possibly the last one. And I subtract the one that is not there. So every time shift the window, multiply by 2, and subtract the last bit that you had to the left. Okay, so far it's great, except that I don't want to work with so huge numbers. So, and I said that it's all related to hashing. So I'm doing everything, but I'm doing everything in mod Q, when Q is 1 prime number. How do I multiply by Q? By 2, I multiply the hash value modulo Q. If I do the modulo Q before or after, doesn't matter. How do I subtract? Subtract, but also modulo Q, or modulo this prime. And Q is just log n bits, so I can work with this. It could be a large prime. Now, why does the whole story works is that I have time for one slide. It's not in the syllabus. It's not just because it's you have a chance. You have a chance for false positive. You have a chance for false positive, but you show that how many different primes do I get that gives me a false positive, if at all. If Q said that what you see in the pattern equal to the base, but they are not equal to each other, then Q must divide the gap, the delta between these two numbers. But these two numbers are smaller than 2 to the n, and is the number of bits. So how many different primes could there be? In the prime factorization of this gap, how many different primes can you have so their products give you a number which is no more than n bits long? Well, depending on the prime, maybe I'll take a really small prime. 2 will work. But how many primes? That will give me only 1 prime. How many other primes do I have? No more than n bits long. And if I start with a really set of about mn many primes and I just pick one at random, it will give me a false positive with pretty low probability at all for any shift for the whole thing. So look at the slide, it's not complicated. Well, it will be a good memorization of where we used prime factorization. We used prime factorization, remember, right, in the hash function dot product. Okay, that's a good point to call it a day, pretty much. I can talk about homework 6 for a bit if there are questions, or to show you people. For the multi-commodity, I got a whole array of answers. To compute the but we can also speak about it closer in the review about how we can do. People used somehow dynamic programming, but still didn't use. People, what was the solution for a few questions in the homework was go over the proof of Bellman-Ford. The proof of Bellman-Ford told you you are doing n passes of all the paths of all the edges. Here is a path pi that satisfies something from S to T. This is the shortest path. Assuming that the vertex, he says, along it is V1, V2, V3, dot, 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 Vk. These are the vertices on the shortest path from S to T. What am I sure after one path of all the edges? That V1 knows the distance to it. D of V1 equals delta to V1 after one pass of all the edges. After another pass, V2 knows it, and so on for until Vk. In particular, if this path is the optimum path with less or equal than 17 hops, then after one pass, let's say, cheapest pass, we say 17 hops. After one pass of all the exams, this value knows what the best path is, at most one hop. Another pass, this pass knows what is the best value with at most 2 hops, 3 hops, 4 hops, and so on. So you can actually do just Bellman-Fold, where at every iteration, every pass of all the edges, you're just relaxing at the ith iteration of Bellman-Fold. Do the relax from u along edge from u of I minus 1 to v at index I. So u of I is a cost that leads to u and has at most I minus 1 hops. V of I is the best hop in the area of v out of the I hops that look only at the ith part. And then you're sure by induction that if you are at every pass, you're spending only linear time, then after how many edges could I have along any simple path? At most n minus 1, sometime after n minus 1 iteration. That was one of the possible solutions people found on various sources, tried a few different approaches. You can call it dynamic programming, but then you still have to prove something about correctness, and so on. So that was a question that some people got confused and for the question of is it okay to prematurely stop Bellman-Fold if nothing has changed from one iteration to another. A lot of people realized correctly that if I just have a flag that tells me in one iteration did any of the estimated distances changed, then my flag will be on. If I have a whole iteration and the flag is off, then if I have another iteration, the flag will stay off still. Nothing will change in the next iteration. And so on. People realized it correctly about the proof about how the number of edges along the path corresponds to how many iterations. A formal proof needs to go through the proof about Bellman-Fold. It's fine after k iterations, that after k plus 1, that at the k plus 1 iteration, nothing will change. And that would be your indication to the algorithm to stop. So depending on how close you were, I took 1 or 2 points. But most people nail it correctly. Yeah?
I have a question about the FFT algorithm. So when you run the convolution, is that an O(n)? Because the convolution is separate from the actual...
It's n log n. It's just divide and conquer. It shows that I split into the left part, right part from m. So it's n log n. For every m, it will be n log n. Yeah. So there are really cool usage of string matching, geometric matching that FFT solve in linear time. Again, and it can handle a reason, and even for the hashing, we don't have time to get into it. If I have a few number of don't cares, I can put them in the hashing, and it wouldn't complain. Okay, am I happy that I taught you primal dual? Maybe, you tell me. It was hard to digest, and I thought that I finally know how to bake it completely, so it will be very digestible. Your feedback today doesn't encourage me that it was all, so as I said, as a practical technique, I suggest have it in your arsenal. And if you are going into more machine learning and see how well it's used in optimization, both in convex optimization or not, primal dual doesn't exist only in convex, only in linear dynamic programming. A lot of the things in linear programming continues elegantly into convex programming, including this one. So that was a material that I'm not sure if I had to mention, like it was my dilemma about importance versus how friendly and how long it takes to stare at it before you say, yes, it's cool. Yeah. Other things, I don't know. Apologize, there was People, the homework sometimes need corrections. I apologize that it wasn't always always clear, but other things to summarize. I thought that it was fantastic course. That many people here really impressed me. Did very good. I mean, I know it's biased samples. The people that maybe are less engaged are not such a. I don't see the feedback from them, but at least as much as I got from you. Don't know. I had my academic freedom of picking the things that I thought that are important, cool, useful, transferable into problems that you might see in the future. I don't think that I taught you something that was completely useless. Like I think about it as some of you pay a lot of money, you need to get it. So try not to waste your time, to my judgment. And I know that some people that will say, I wish we wouldn't have to take 545 all at all, given that it's kind of across the border for this department, for every, I think, university, for higher degree. It's not. You will have a similar course. Yeah. Don't know. That's all I have, and we'll communicate, as I said before, the midterm. Yeah, you can have a bit more time to submit the homework, as obviously. I cannot formally give you, I cannot have it for a time after the end of the semester, but I can have extension, but we'll have a review, so at least before the review, which would be like 2 or 3 days before the exam. Please finish your homework. Yeah.
Is Wednesday going to be the review for the exam?
I think that semester is officially ended, and
no, we have a course Wednesday. Thursday is when it's over. Thursday is our reading yet.
I'm so lost because other course has an exam on Wednesday. Okay, mysterious. Okay.
Okay.
So why did I thought you? So it's not our last class, okay. So we have time to do, okay, so we'll do Rabin properly at least, and the rest of the time I don't know if I have something to teach you, at least Rabin properly. We will do, I suggest usually that the review is more effective when it's closer to the exam, and that's, we have some time until, but we can have 2 reviews, but So, in short answer, yeah, you got me by surprise because I haven't. I'm not sure what we'll do on Wednesday besides talking about Rabin Karp. What other things? I don't know. I can go over the material and have part of the review. But in the Google Doc, I just put a placeholder that we start approximation, like geometric approximation, like the Dorit-Hochbaum bound. So that's overlap with midterm. Linear programming overlap with midterm, but I will not ask about it directly. But it could be that a solution to other problem involves linear programming. So. And it could be the solution to other problem involves skip list, but again, it's not covered, I think. Up to it, other than that, I think that the format will be the same. We have, as I told you on Piazza, there is plenty of notations that we used, like so. So if I'll have it, at least the slides will be there, or some cheat sheet that I'll show you. For some of the dynamic programming algorithms that I thought it was more memory heavy, especially the polygon triangulation for sure. Yeah.
Is the primal dual content fair game for the final?
It is. I mean, it's we spend a lot of time with it. That being said, I know at which point I started to cover it. I got a vibe from you about how obvious it is, and it's hard because it's the geometry of it is not clear because here we are good in throwing 2D scenarios, but that makes a very boring dual. If your dual has more than 3D, then in the primal you're living in much higher dimensions, so it's pretty hard to draw it without just the algebra part. The only part where I thought that there was a very good intuition, and that's, I don't know how, if I can have any questions about it, but that was a part about yeah, the part that this vector is positive, that looks ugly, but that it always boils down to, if I know that gravity, that C pulls the optimum to this part, but C lies on these two directions, then C must be in this cone that these two guys, or these big guys, pulls, because if it's not in the cone, then gravity can make it move forward to an even better and even more optimal vertex. So this is not the optimalist vertex if it's not in the cone. And if it's in the cone, if C is in the cone of A1 and A2, A1 and A2, I'll remind you, it's the two constraints that the optimum is determined by. That's the two constraints that are tight. The other constraints have this point is in the feasible region of the other ones, but it's not on the lines that bounding the other constraint. The optimum is on the lines of the two constraints, or the plane of the three constraints in 3D, and so on. And they have a special one. That's the one that I'm using to generate the inverse matrix. And at least going through what is this Y star and how I create the solution from the primal to the dual, yes, but how can I make it without making it too nightmarish? I'll have to think. Again, it's which, what can I take from it without making it? You hate algorithms, you hate me, or what? There was a set of questions about primal and dual, where I didn't even show you that one is a dual to another, like the flow and the mean cut, but I did state it exactly, and you definitely want to know mean cut max flow theorem, plus a proof. It was constructive proof. The proof suggested an algorithm to find what is a minimum cut in the network, and then there was a slide that shows that the max flow, mean cut are dual to each other. And it was strange. We had two LPs that find shortest path. One was dual to another. One was by xi minus xj, keeps them no more than the length of the edge, and then maximize them. That was way in the back. And then I showed an ILP that tried to minimize it modulo that I'm sending a bit of a flow, one path of the flow from S to T. So two problems that find shortest path. Yeah, so here's the part that is yes, and I expect everybody to know to prove it, to show that the primal dual, when it's in the canonical representation, let me answer the question about the primal dual in the canonical representation. Primal dual in the canonical representation is when I solve x that maximize Cx subjects to Ax smaller than B, x positive. Canonical dual written like this. And there was a very easy and very cute proof that shows that every solution to this is smaller than every solution to this. In particular implies if they match, then you got to the optimum to all of them, which starts beginning of a lot of algorithm. So, and that was just very, very easy part that just went by. Hey, when I write y times a times x, I can write it in one terms as smaller than Cx, on the other side smaller than yb. That's a solution to the primal, that's a solution to the dual. Yeah, sorry, that's a solution to the dual, that's a solution to the primal. every solution to the dual that I'm trying to maximize is smaller than every solution to the dual that I'm trying to minimize. Hopefully I said it correctly. Make sense? Once again, that if I'm trying the primal where I'm maximizing, I'm trying to get it larger and larger. Dual that I'm minimizing, trying to push it lower and lower. Every solution of the primal smaller than every solution of the dual. That was a weak duality theorem. The strong duality theorem said that when you hit the optimum, they actually match each other. That was slightly harder, but that was just, I know that the optimum is obtained by exactly D matrices, that is out of all the constraints. I can isolate D that I'm tight with respect to them, and then generating the solution to the dual was just taking this matrix, assume that it has an inverse, and multiply the solution to the dual x. So multiply y is just take the cost function multiplied by this the guy that I found the solution to. -1, and that's my solution to the dual, and to prove that it satisfies all the conditions of the dual was easy, except of the that are positive, and that was less easy. So this part, yes, when everything is in the canonical way. It starts also to be part of the headache if it's not in the canonical way, and I have some constraints with smaller, some constraints with larger, or in the primal, and then in the dual, some becomes larger or smaller, and the rules here are started to be more involved. So on this one, you don't need to worry at the moment. Okay, we'll continue Wednesday.
When we share,
Oh, sorry.
when we share this last year's final